weird situation Saturday where it's just a MAC team, but Ohio State played so well that everyone's so fired up. So it's been a good time on the site here the last few days, kind of breaking down the big win. Recruiting is in kind of an interesting place right now. I wouldn't say the class is full by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we're seeing a shift now from kind of recruiting these uncommitted guys to keeping what you have and maybe trying to flip some guys from other programs. And so it's getting a little bit interesting. We're kind of entering flip season right now. So we may talk a little bit about that, but Kevin, you were at the game on Saturday night. What have your impressions been so far watching the team live here the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think that watching the team here this last week, they really grew on certain aspects because, okay, you can look at the Akron game in week 1, 52-6. They ended up doing it with 14 points off of defense, everything else. I think this game against Western Michigan, we really saw the offense find its footing. I think we really kind of saw some differentiation in how the offense is constructed under Chip Kelly versus what maybe Ryan Day was doing. I think we saw a lot more RPO type stuff under, in this second game. And I think that a lot of teams on Ohio State's schedule have taken notice now because, okay, you played a couple of MAC schools, and I'm not taking anything away from the MAC. We saw this Western Michigan team lead Wisconsin in the fourth quarter. We saw a Western Michigan team that probably could have beat Wisconsin in that fourth quarter and just kind of came up short. Oh, by the way, Northern Illinois, who defeated Notre Dame, is in the MAC. So what Ohio State has done has been pretty impressive. Now, it's not always apples to apples. You can't sit there and say, well, Western Michigan is equal to Northern Illinois is equal to Akron. No, there are various levels in the MAC, just like there are various levels in the Big Ten. But I think that the excitement is starting to crescendo this open week falling this weekend. There are a lot of people like, well, that's like a momentum buzzkill or whatever. Well, you're going to have to do 2 of them. Yeah, week 3 may be a little bit early. Ohio State's second one coming October 19th may feel a little bit early as well. But it is what it is. You have to deal with what the schedule makers give you. And, I'll end my comments on this with 2 words: Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as we kind of, we're happy to do this, talk about the team. If you guys have team questions, we're happy to talk about that too. But this is obviously at its core is our recruiting show. And I wanted to kind of tie in a few things that we've seen here the first couple of weeks to recruiting. And one of those, of course, is Jeremiah Smith. And, I've talked about it now several times on different shows and on the website about how I've always been the person who, well, so-and-so is going to start as a freshman. Well, no, they're not. Like that's outrageous. Let's not put that expectation on these freshmen. And Jeremiah was kind of the first guy where people asked me like, hey, you think Jeremiah could start as a freshman? And my answer wasn't just maybe. My answer was, oh, he's going to start as a freshman. I don't think anyone in that room is going to keep him out of the starting lineup. And sure enough, he has been as advertised, if not even better. Is he their best receiver? You could make the case that he is. Obviously, Emeka is very good. Carnell Tate's very good, but it's kind of flowing off what we were hearing in the spring when people around the program, and we've got to watch some spring practice too, but then you talk to people around the program who are at the scrimmages and we're seeing everything every day. And you were getting a lot of feedback that, yeah, he's going to start, but he might actually be the team's best receiver. He might, and that is just a shocking thing to hear because I do think Emeka Egbuka to me is going to be a first-round pick. And I think there's a good chance that Carnell Tate is going to be a first-round pick in a couple of years. So to come in as a true freshman in spring and establish yourself at that level is very unique. And like I've said before, he's one of the 2 best high school football players I've ever seen since I've been doing this. So, just it's translating already. So it's obviously very exciting there. But the thing I kind of want to get into right now is we're seeing some interesting interesting things happen around the country right now. One school that has had a lot of recruiting momentum has been Auburn. And whether that's commitments, whether that's getting other people's commits on campus for games. Thank you for the comment, Sue. I hope Autry and Offord were watching the Auburn game. Yeah, like that's not nothing. Yeah, I've talked about this before, how Auburn's been the team to watch for Naeem Offord. Like if Ohio State was going to get burned on by Naeem Offord, that Auburn was going to be the most likely program to be able to do that. And there's obviously others like Alabama and Oregon are trying, but Auburn's been kind of the school I've been told to watch really since the day he committed to Ohio State. And that was ugly on Saturday. That was really ugly on Saturday. And you wonder, because Offord's an in-state kid, how much of that's going to matter. I think it does for him. I don't think it does as much for Autry. Autry, for Malik Autry, the defensive tackle, grew up right down the road from Auburn. I mean, it's like literally, I don't know. You might be able to those vortex footballs you can throw like a million yards. I think you might be able to hit Auburn's campus from his high school. It's really close. So I think we're talking two different situations here. I think Autry is just kind of can you possibly convince this kid to not be a homebody? His parents are from the area. These are people that, and we kind of joked about this during like Mike Weber's recruitment, which Ohio State ultimately was able to hold on to that commitment and actually win that recruiting race. But, people would joke to me that, Mike Weber's dad had never left Detroit, and I kind of mentioned this as a positive for Ohio State in their pursuit of Zach Harrison. Was like, I don't know if Zach Harrison's dad has left Central Ohio since the family moved there. I don't know that Malik Autry,
that they never left like 8 blocks of their households.
Right. And so like, I don't know that Malik Autry's parents, other than the visits, a couple of these official visits, I don't know that they've ever left like that little, corner of Alabama. So that is going to be a much different monster, I think, in terms of how Auburn's on-field stuff impacts recruiting. But I do think it's something to watch for Offord, because I do think one of the big reasons Ohio State was able to get the early commitment was the uncertainty around the in-state programs. You have a coaching change going on at Alabama. You don't know how that's going to go necessarily. And then Auburn I'm not trying to like do Ohio State's bidding here, but Auburn's been irrelevant for a long time. They've not been relevant in a while. They've been kind of pushed to the periphery of college football over the course of like the last decade. So like, I think that was big in Ohio. So if Auburn is unable to show that they're trending in the right direction, I do think that helps Ohio State, even with my skepticism that's surrounded that recruitment really since the day he committed to Ohio State. So,
we talk so much that one game doesn't really change the outlook of a kid. But with that being said, if the trajectory of the program doesn't look like it's in the right direction, if it doesn't look like a coaching staff may be longed for being there, there are a lot of factors that can kind of go into it. So, we've said it before, and Ohio State has not lost many games here recently. Unfortunately, I can name 3 of them that they've lost that people are going to have major issue with. But it's not going to be a case of one game doing that. But what is Auburn doing at this point? Does Auburn look like it's in the right direction? No. Does it look like that staff is going in the right direction? No, it doesn't. So, yeah, if you are in an Auburn suburb, if you're in Opelika, which is a suburb, then it's like a kid from Pickerington, just to do a comparison, maybe even closer, probably closer, a kid in Upper Arlington to Ohio State. It's that close. But for Offord, Naeem Offord, who is not in an Auburn suburb per se, it's going to be something that he's going to take pause with. And, I just think even maybe his personality too. The kid's a winner. I think the kid wants to be part of a winner. I don't think Auburn is a winner at this point. So, I think Ohio State has to kind of keep banging on that drum of, Yeah, sure. You could stay home and be the in-state hero and everything else, and you can have your Decembers and Januaries off. But if you go to Ohio State, you're going to be a little busy because you're going to be playing for football titles.
Yeah, I just think, again, you hit on it well with, one game isn't going to decide this type of thing, but when your narrative all summer is we're on the right track, we're going to have a good season this year, you're going to see results, you're going to see improvement, we're going to be back, we're going to be back in the mix in the SEC, or upward trajectory, all the cliches you want to throw out there, and then you lose at home to Cal. It's not great. It's not great. So we'll see. Like I said,
There are a
we'll
lot
see
of
how
G5s. There are a lot of G5s that would have been an easier loss to explain. But Cal couldn't even get into a real conference. I mean, really. I mean, it kind of came in.
Cal's not great. So
No.
that's a game. That's a game you got to win at home. So that's going on. You've got Marcus Freeman losing at home to Northern Illinois. This is the second year in a row they've lost at home, or the second time in 3 years they've lost at home to a MAC, basically a MAC level program, losing to Marshall a couple years ago. And then what may be the worst loss of the three is losing to Stanford at home. I think that was last year. So this has become a pattern. And to me, it's interesting more so the national media has been very generous, in my opinion, to Marcus Freeman. He's a likable guy. He's had a lot of success as an assistant coach. His players really like him. But Brian Kelly, for all of his warts, and I'm not much of a Brian Kelly guy, okay? So don't like put me as like a Brian Kelly guy here. He was 44-6 in his last 50 games in Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman did not take over a rebuilding project. And Freeman's now lost 8 of his, I think it's like 8 out of 30 games or whatever it is, or 8 out of, he's got 8 losses, and this is his third full year. The beginning of his third.
What has he got? Like the same number of losses as Ryan Day, maybe even like one more or something. It's
like that program's not better than it was when Brian Kelly was there. So I'm going to leave that thought there. I got to jump here for 5 seconds and let Kevin take things over for 1 second. But Kevin, take that and run for a second.
Yeah, and Mike Farina, we'll get to your super chat here in a second. But with Marcus Freeman was not necessarily a consensus choice when Notre Dame was faced with having to replace Brian Kelly, who went to LSU and developed a Southern accent and all of that good stuff. To echo what Marc said, Marcus Freeman is a really likable guy. I think that it all came too fast, too quickly for him at this point. I think he probably needed a couple more years of seasoning at he still could have stayed in the Power 5, but maybe at a less scrutinized program, because Notre Dame has more scrutiny than it warrants. I mean, we're still talking about a program that did everything when we traveled across the United States by train, when they had the only national radio contract. And that's why they have these gigantic heads and think that they have to have their own TV deal and everything else. I mean, reality, it's a program that's been down largely. I mean, if you look at it, and Marc did bring up that Brian Kelly was whatever in the end of his, the end of his tenure at Notre Dame, but there were people ready to run him out on a rail. Brian Kelly can't win the big game. They can't win the bowl game. They can't get in. They can't even get into the meaningful conference, into the meaningful playoff bowl games. So now you have Marcus Freeman, and they just look so lost. Look so lost against Northern Illinois, and Northern Illinois we've said it time and time again. Screw around with your opponent and let them be there in the fourth quarter and F around and find out. And that's what happened there. That's what happened there. And they're now on their second, mercenary quarterback. First it was Sam Hartman. Now it's Riley Leonard. And these quarterbacks look like a shell of themselves. I don't know what's in the water there. There's obviously something in the water. South Bend is not really a great town. I had a lot of fun there last year, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't want to go to school there. But I don't know. I do not know how to explain what's going on there. But yeah, there are a lot of people ready to run Marcus Freeman out on a rail. Then who? Then who? I mean, it isn't a Michigan situation that if it wasn't going to be Jim Harbaugh, who's it going to be? But I don't know. I don't know what's wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, the cliff notes is that the honeymoon's over, right? So like, if you watch, whether it's Notre Dame Twitter, whether it's the message boards, Notre Dame message boards, even some of the Notre Dame local media, the honeymoon's over. Like, it's time to get results there. And so is there a specific situation right now that I think this impacts Ohio State? Not necessarily right now, but there's no question Ohio State and Notre Dame are recruiting rivals. And that's going to be something to watch here, I think, as we get into the spring is, okay, how has Notre Dame finished this season? Is this just like a blip and they go on a run here? I don't think their schedule is particularly difficult. In fact, I think a lot of people had them in the playoff because it wasn't difficult at all. And we're looking at a schedule that
beating A&M, they were anointed. It was
and why, and that, not to derail this podcast, but like I'm still a little confused why that is. A&M just fired its coach last year. They were bad last year. They underperformed the last few years. Why is beating A&M by the skin of your teeth anointed as a big win? A&M might lose 7-8 games, and we don't know how good Texas A&M is yet. I mean, they could lose 7-8 games in the SEC again. I mean, who knows? So the honeymoon's over there, and I do think it'll be interesting to see how they respond. And because if they don't, if this Notre Dame team loses 3 or 4 games with that schedule, I do think that has some recruiting repercussions down the road, down in the winter and into the spring for Ohio State, maybe more so on the 26 recruiting class front. Mike Farino, thank you for the super chat. He's referring to Naeem Offord here. It's kind of the reverse of Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs needed to see proof of concept, and we were unable to show him when it mattered. And yes, you're right. Now Auburn, it's up to Auburn to show Naeem Offord some proof of concept, I think. And so we'll see, how that goes. Like I said before, my warning to people that are following these recruitments, whether it's Micah DeBose, whether it's Naeem Offord or Zion Grady. And by the way, I'm very, very confident they signed Zion Grady. I wouldn't even necessarily put him in the same bucket as the other two guys I just mentioned, but just these Alabama situations, you have 2 very desperate programs in Alabama right now for different reasons. Auburn obviously is a desperation to be relevant and to get this thing going under Hugh Freeze. And Alabama is more of a high pressure, maybe the highest pressure of any coach we've seen recently to keep something going that his predecessor, most coaches take over because the coach before them got fired. So he's going to get a honeymoon phase. He's going to get a year or 2 to figure things out. Kalen DeBoer's not getting that at Alabama. So it's imperative for him to get off to a good start on the field and in recruiting. So those are just 2 storylines to watch here as we watch these Alabama prospects and their decisions unfold here the next 3 months. Some Florida State questions as well that, we're going down the line. I promise we're going to get to them too. This is kind of what I wanted to talk about today, really, just with the bye week coming up and everything else. There's not tons of new recruiting, like buzz going on necessarily around Ohio State, more so around the country and things that could impact Ohio State. And yes, Javian Hilson, big time defensive end out of Cocoa, Florida, decommitted from Florida State.
I'll believe they keep a Cocoa kid. Ohio State keeps a Cocoa kid when it keeps a Cocoa kid. I mean, they keep landing them and then they keep decommitting and everything else. I'm hearing Texas for Hilson.
And I was kind of told probably not was my answer last night when I poked around about Javian Hilson. So I wouldn't really get any hopes up there or look into that one. I think he's probably going to go somewhere else. This is his second decommitment, so then the next one will be his third school. So I don't know. That may impact Ohio State even as far as like, okay, how much do we dive back into this one, if at all? It's been a roller coaster. So I don't know. I think no on that. Texas sounds as good as anything to me at this point for him, but we'll see how that unfolds here. But yes, Florida State's another one. Like, what a disaster of a start for them. They are 0-2. They've been a combined like 32, 33 points favorite. It was like 14, right, for Georgia Tech-ish. And it was, I think the line closed. Well, I know the line closed. I don't know what it was like the whole week, but the line for Boston College closed at like 18.5. So they've been over 30 points worth favorites in their first two games. They're 0-2. They don't have the world's most difficult schedule. Really, anyone in the ACC, other than maybe like a team like Clemson, who went out and scheduled Georgia, doesn't really have the most difficult schedule in the world. So that's a program where could I see them like moving on from Norvell after this year? No.
They're probably still paying three coaches back, potentially.
Like his buyout is impossible. Even in today's like funny money landscape, like his buyout is like impossible. I'm pretty sure it's like 60, 70 million. Like it's all like guaranteed. And despite what the war chant posters might say, I think as an administration, if you set the precedent of firing a coach a year after he went undefeated in the regular season, that's probably not a precedent you're going to set. So I think he's safe for this year for sure. But again, let's talk about like narratives here. The narrative before the Georgia debacle, which again can be explained away. I mean, it's hard to explain away that bad, but you can still explain that away. But the narrative going into the Georgia debacle was that this was one of the hottest programs in the country, that Mike Norvell had, brought Florida State back to national prominence, and that this was going to be a program to be reckoned with moving forward. And we see them lose by 60 to Georgia in that bowl game where it just felt like no one was interested in being there, which isn't a great necessarily look on its own. But and then you have these two coming out of the gate here, and it's like, because I don't know. Maybe Boston, maybe Bill. I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach. I thought that was a good hire for Ohio State when he made it. I think he's done. Maybe he's not an NFL general man. Like he had too much personnel power in the NFL, but as like a college football coach at a place like Boston College, I thought that was a great fit. I think he'll do well there, but I don't think Georgia Tech's all that good. Syracuse went up and down the field.
Lost.
Kyle McCord looked like Dan Marino last week. And they give up a ton of points and yards to Syracuse. Are we sure Boston College is like going to win like 9 games this year? Like, are we sure about that? Or, so we don't know yet whether or not Florida State's even lost to 2 teams who are going to win more than 7 games this year. So it's been a disaster there. And again, I kind of liken this more so to Notre Dame's situation than Auburn's in terms of like the longevity of like the impact of this. I don't know how much it's going to help Ohio State today. Like with it, like it could with Auburn. It could help Ohio State right now with Auburn. I think with Florida State, it probably helps like the Florida and Miamis of the world today as they have these ridiculous in-state, tug of wars they have every year at this time. But maybe more so for Ohio State as we get into the spring and summer next year. Maybe the Florida State pool isn't as strong for some of these guys, especially when you're talking about like receivers. That they were a very hot receiver school there for a while. So maybe this helps them down the road. It's just me, Tim. So you could argue Kyle could eventually become a better quarterback in the NFL. I don't disagree. I was not on the Kyle McCord hate train last year. I knew going into the season his biggest crime was going to be he's not as good as CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins. Like that was going to be his biggest crime was he wasn't as good as the last 3 guys he had that went in the first round. And he wasn't great at times, obviously. I backed Ryan Day's decision to tell Kyle that, we're not telling you to move on, but we also have to keep the quarterback competition open again this offseason. I thought that was a fair decision. But I didn't look at Kyle as like Joe Bowserman 2.0. I thought he was much better in general than the fan base thought he was. But yes, to your point, I think the fit at Syracuse was good. There's some familiarity there between him and some of the coaches there. And with what Ohio State did, do I think in a vacuum that Will Howard is a massive upgrade over Kyle McCord? Just again, in a vacuum, 1 versus 1, not really. Do I think Will Howard fits what this roster needs and what Chip Kelly, more importantly, and this, I know he didn't even come in here when Chip was the OC, but I think this is a better fit for what Chip wants to do with his offense. I think it's a better fit for what Ryan Day wants in terms of a little bit more mobility out of the quarterback position. And I think Will Howard's a little bit more of a vocal leader. Kyle was more of a kind of a serious, he was kind of I always call him Captain Serious, because just all it's very, very.
Jonathan Tays takes exception.
Yes. Well, that was kind of my joke, but just kind of the whole not mellow, but just very, very this. And Howard gives you a little more of this sometimes when it's needed. So I think probably what we're going to look back on in a couple months is that this kind of worked out for everybody.
Yeah. And, LSU Zabo, what about Florida? Surely Napier is going to get canned. Any to flip there. It's a race to the bottom right now between Florida and Florida State. And Florida has done a pretty decent job in terms of its recruiting class for now. I think one of the issues there is a lot of those kids are Florida kids, or state of Florida kids. And, Napier could not win another game there, and it's not going to make Ohio State or USC or Michigan any closer. And, I think on a lot of those kids, part of the equation of picking Florida or Florida State is proximity to home. So it's really easy to look at a program that is in major, dire straits and say, well, all of those kids are immediately on everybody's radar. And there'll be a couple. I've not looked at Florida's class here recently.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up here and take a look.
I'll talk as Marc pulls up their list. But, I think that Miami's hoping that maybe it can be the alternative to everything that's going on. I mean, still being in state. And let's be honest, it's a long state. We've driven it umpteen million times. And every time you think, oh, we should be near the state line. Oh, we're still 3 hours from the state line. But, it's not going to be a case of Ohio State saying, to hell with it, we're not going to try. They're going to try. I mean, it's flip season. That's what we're in. I mean, I was just reading a story from one of the networks that Miami's trying to flip TJ Alford. Well, good luck with that, Miami. I mean, but we'll see.
Yeah, and Kevin did hit it on the head as far as the blood in the water thing is going to really be a state of Florida thing. Like, these are all these in-state battles they have, and like Miami's certainly winning the narrative war right now. There's no doubt about that. Like, Florida State, the narratives around Florida State and Florida right now are almost rock bottom. I didn't mind the Napier hire when it happened. I was like, we'll see. That might work. I was kind of agnostic about it. It's been a train wreck. And it's been a train wreck from like the get-go. Like, Kevin and I watched, we were down. Gosh, where were we? Were we in Atlanta? We watched Florida, Utah last year. I don't even remember where we were, but we watched Florida, Utah last year, and it was a whole lot of not good for Florida. And, we've just steadily kind of watched them just deteriorate. And maybe DJ Lagway will save the day here this season, save Napier's job. But I agree, Napier's on the hot seat.
Graham Mertz ain't the answer. I could have told you that 2 years ago.
Yeah, it goes. That's a whole other like almost topic of like coaches watching a quarterback not be good 2 or 3 years in a row somewhere else and thinking, I'll fix him. And then you have Bo Nix do it at Oregon, and everyone's like, "Oh, see, we'll just do it. It'll be just like Bo Nix. We'll watch him play like crap for 3 years, and then we'll fix him." And Florida and Florida State have both fallen into that trap and are paying dearly for it right now. But I look at Florida's commitment list, and the guy to watch, I think, is Vernell Brown. There's no doubt if Vernell Brown called Ohio State tomorrow and said, "Hey, you know what? This is a disaster here at Florida. I'm out. Let me go up there," that they would take him.
But he's still a legacy.
Exactly. He is still a legacy. And clearly that won the day the first time around, because it wasn't receiver production or development or national championship. Like, there was nothing there the first time around other than, this is like my home. Like, I'm in Central Florida. This place means a lot to my family. I'm going to go here and kind of be the man and whatever. So I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think that's one name. If you're looking at the list right now, if you want to bring that up, if you people like to browse these types of things, if you go to their commitment list, that's probably the name I think that kind of jumps off the page. I don't know that anything else there really is going to make sense. So I saw a few questions. Oh, is Preston Bowman a take? I'm not sure about that yet. I think they're evaluating senior film. That's kind of what I've been told. But they're keeping up the relationship there. They're recruiting him relatively hard. And then they'll make a decision, I think, based off of the next few weeks. Just get 5-6 games of film and decide. Now, Preston is, pretty locked in with Kentucky. I don't think, we talk about this all the time with in-state kids about the timing of offers and too early, too late, whatever. He commits to Kentucky and like the next day he gets the Ohio State offer. I don't know that
worked,
rubbed him the right way. So I think there's some damage repair to be done there, but that's definitely a name to keep in mind. I saw a different, somewhat related question that asked about, would they take a fifth receiver? And my answer to that is yes, they would. And in fact, would they take a sixth receiver with the new 105 scholarships, which I don't expect Ohio State to get to 105, but I think they would even consider let's put it this way. If Miles or Vernell Brown called Ohio State tomorrow and said, "I'm coming," they're taking one of those guys, and then they could still go and take Preston Bowman in November if they really like a senior film and he wants to flip. So yes, there is room to add here. I wouldn't say other than quarterback, obviously, I wouldn't say there's really a position right now where they would 100% say no to any addition, no matter what. Like, I think with the expanded scholarship numbers, even if they're not actively looking at, like, I don't think they're really super active right now on defensive line. I think they're pretty happy with what they have. But if a certain player or something called, I think there's pretty much
taking Malik Autry if he wants it.
Yeah, well, yes. Like there's guys they'll take at pretty much every position right now. I think except quarterback, obviously.
Jordan Kapler, does Dion have any more kids that Ohio State could recruit? I know Kevin is really hoping we can land a Sanders kid. The latest story that made its way onto the Twitters that I saw this morning was that after Shadur Sanders scores, the band is not allowed to play the fight song. It has to be Sanders's rap song. So, I mean, talk about just a nickel and dime circus is what this program has turned out to. And I feel bad for Dallin Hayden. Dallin Hayden is a great kid. I got to know Dallin Hayden through his recruiting process. When he came up to visit, I shot photos for him, things like that. I mean, and it was, he's gone there. I think he had 5 carries in the last game, in the Nebraska game, and didn't really amount to anything. It's just a mess. I guess to keep this on the recruiting vein, Jordan Seaton is going to probably be a very big target coming into the portal after the year. And, I think we talked about it on the show last week. And be sure to join us. We're trying to make 3 p.m. Eastern the set time of this show. But in case we change it or to catch anything else, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, make sure you get all of that stuff done so you know when we're coming on the air. But yeah, Seton certainly would be a huge prize, as Ohio State probably will need to land a couple of guys with experience. I think Jordan Seton may have to unlearn some things. I'm pretty well convinced, because that offensive line there is terrible. And sometimes we try to blame one particular lineman. Well, it kind of runs across the line because you don't know what each person's supposed to be doing. But yeah, Colorado is a mess, and I'm fading Deion returning next year. I would fade that bet.
Yeah, I've got 2 hot takes on this, and then we can move to the next thing because Kevin covered it pretty well. But my first hot take is I've seen all the mock drafts that have Shedeur, anywhere from top 5 to top 10. As dumb as maybe a third of the GMs are in the NFL, I cannot see an NFL team making Shedeur Sanders the CEO, face of their franchise, with a top 5 draft pick. I don't think he's made for that. Threw his O-line under the bus in the post-game press conference. He's walking off the field early before his teammates after losses. And it just constantly seems to be pointing the finger at everybody else. And that's not even to say that he's not even right in some cases with the offensive line, but you don't, that's not how you handle things. I think he's got a lot of growing up to do. And I just don't think the circus is going to fly with grown men in the NFL. So obviously he's going to be drafted, and I think someone will probably draft him relatively. I think someone will probably take, maybe a 2nd or 3rd round flyer on him. I don't think he's going to go in the top 5. I really don't. I mean, look, the New York Giants are dumb. I mean, look, they're paying Daniel Jones $40 million this year. So maybe the New York Giants will be that crazy to bring the circus to the biggest city in the country. But I have a hard time, even with my low opinion of certain franchise decision makers, I have a hard time believing someone's going to give him the keys to as a top 5 pick. So that's hot take number 1. Hot take number 2, and I don't think this is a hot take, I think this is a fact. If Deion Sanders doesn't return to Colorado next year, Jordan Seton's in the transfer portal. Jordan Seton's not rotting away in Boulder, Colorado for 2 years on a rebuild, on a new coach that he didn't sign up to play for. That ain't happening. So make of that what you will. Would Ohio State be involved? Could Ohio State be involved? At that point, I have no idea what they're going to, we don't know who's going to be in the portal. There may be something more appetizing for them in the portal that they no thanks. I don't know. We'll see. But Jordan Seton will be in the transfer portal at the end of the year if Deion Sanders is out. All right.
McIntyre, do you think Ohio State has a chance to land Dylan Stewart if he decides to transfer next season? I know we lose a lot on the edges, and he looks great at South Carolina. I mean, yeah, I've watched some tapes, and he one of the best, has some of the best couple game tape that I've seen out there at the position. I don't know necessarily why he'd be looking to jump and leave Shane Beamer's program at this point. I know that everybody's like, well, you can go up and move into a bigger stage. I mean, it is still an SEC team. I mean, it is South Carolina. I mean, I guess people watched the South Carolina-Kentucky game this past weekend, which was not necessarily super impressive in terms of its competitive nature. But Dylan Stewart picked South Carolina for a reason. Now, if that reason were to go away, whether it be a coaching change, which is a big change. I mean, I don't know, loss of a position coach. Sure. Ohio State loved him the first time around. I think Ohio State would love him the second time around. But unless I haven't read anything to lead me to believe that Stewart is looking around.
Yeah, and I say this lovingly. I think a lot of Ohio State fans are trying to wish him into the portal without any evidence that he would actually be entertaining that idea. But yeah, I mean, if a player like that ended up in the portal, yes, Ohio State would absolutely be interested. I just, I have not heard any reason. I mean, I'm sure he got a very competitive NIL package there. South Carolina's done very well in the DMV the last few years with recruiting. So he's got some boys down there. Nick Harbour and they've done a really good job recruiting the DMV. And It doesn't, again, if they nosedive this year and Shane Beamer gets fired, then yeah, I mean, maybe all bets could be off at that point. But right now they're playing, they played decent football there on Saturday, and no real reason to expect that. I wouldn't get my hopes up.
No. I mean, there were the linemen over the last couple of years that Ohio State wasn't able to land, whether or not they went to South Carolina, whether or not they went to Miami, Florida, or whatever. If you see a name in the portal, then I think Ohio State's going to go after it. We know that Ohio State certainly has people tasked solely in the recruiting department with the portal. We're going to recruit X, Y, and Z out of high school, and we're going to recruit A, B, and C from the portal. So don't ever think it's going to be a case of that Ohio State's going to be caught flat-footed and not expecting somebody to show up there. You're doing that, and there's a reason why even after a kid commits somewhere before they get on campus and everything else, that you're going to at least be keeping tabs. You can't communicate kids at a certain point, so none of that's going on. But you sometimes have to be ready for a kid coming around the second time. Just because you don't land them the first time doesn't mean that you might not land them the second time. So, don't burn any bridges. And I've certainly heard horrible stories out there about coaches that, position coaches largely, more so than anything else, that say some pretty terrible things to kids. It's like, well, you're just wrecking your life and you're stupid. Click. I mean, you can't do that. This is a people business. You can't do that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time we live in, and the role of the high school coach in this as well. That's who's getting the calls right now. When, Jordan Seaton's out there rotting away in Colorado, or whoever it may be around the country, 5-star player X from last year who isn't playing or is in a situation where the coach is on the hot seat, their high school coaches are getting blown up right now, asking if they're happy, if they're interested, so the back channels are always being worked.
Mike, we'll get to your super chat in a second. I want to address this one so I don't lose it, because I took my little star notification off of it, which means I may never find it again. The best damn pod in the land asks, Marc, curious about Micah DeBose. As some others have suggested, OSU hasn't stopped recruiting him. Thoughts? Yeah,
we've talked a lot about Micah lately, and I had a brief update on him on Friday on the site. Yes, Ohio State is still very active. In fact, that's, I jokingly called it Micah DeBose is the plan A of the plan Bs for David Sanders. Not that Micah's a plan B. He was always a plan A recruit for them, but the plan B for losing David Sanders or the plan A for losing David Sanders among the plan Bs is to flip Micah DeBose from Alabama. That is where a lot of their time and effort and energy is going right now. Tavian St. Clair, I talked to Tavian about that and shared that on the site a couple weeks ago. Tavian's talking to him pretty much every day. He's like, I'm trying not to bug him as much as possible. He's like, I'm talking to him almost every day just to stay in his ear. And so that is 1000% kind of where they've steered this after losing Sanders. And, I was always skeptical of them getting him the first time around. So I'm not exactly like super optimistic this time around. But the one angle I find interesting is they had a very competitive NIL package ready to go for David Sanders. Well, now David Sanders isn't coming. So you've got this very competitive NIL package with no recipient to take it. So I'm wondering, and I'll probably never get the full answer to this because that's just not, you'll get it's a competitive package for DeBose. Like, they're never going to say, yeah, we took everything that we had for David Sanders and we just put that on. You're not going to get that answer. But I continue to view NIL in the salary cap terms, and they freed up a lot of cap space by not getting David Sanders. And so you wonder if, as someone in DeBose's situation, who's already in a class with like two other like 5-star caliber offensive linemen from out of state, which generally runs more expensive, going to be more expensive to get a 5-star offensive lineman from Texas than it is to keep one from Alabama, home in Alabama. You do wonder, like, can Ohio State put together a package that Alabama is either unable, and probably unable is the wrong word, unwilling to, be competitive with. So that'll be interesting to me if that helps. Obviously the Cleveland ties, those didn't help the first time around though. I mean, this was like LSU, Alabama, and maybe Ohio State 3. the first time around. So this was LSU Alabama the first time around. So he, to me, regardless of where his parents are from or any ties he might have to Ohio, like he, to me, has kind of grown up as an SEC kid. So I don't really view the Cleveland thing as a huge boost. But I do think there's an angle there in terms of NIL, in terms of the Ohio State tackle depth chart, and now Micah knows they're not getting David Sanders. He could not have known that, 3 months ago or 2 months ago. He could not have known they weren't getting David Sanders. No one knew where Sanders was going yet. So there are some things here at play that may help them. I'm not super optimistic yet, but again, we'll see.
Super chat, Mike Farino. How much does Keon Keeley regret picking Alabama over Ohio State right now? Still can't see the field there. Was never a good fit for him.
Yeah, that's not something Keon has shared with me or anyone else, I don't think. But to me, it was an interesting decision at the time it was made. I certainly think there were some people in his camp who very, very much preferred him at Alabama. And Alabama did a very good job of selling him on how he would fit that defense. Do I agree that he fits that defense better than maybe a 4-down lineman set up like Ohio State generally employs? No. But that's the salesmanship aspect of college football recruiting. So Alabama was able to sell it. Do I think he regrets picking Alabama over OSU out of high school? Probably not. The real question to me is, does he regret not hitting the portal back in the winter and at least testing the market? That may be the real question. And so that will be interesting to watch this winter, I guess, when things open up. I mean, in theory, you can announce a transfer, your intention to transfer anytime, but I don't know that would make any sense right now.
Well, if we do that, then you're damn well guaranteed not to see any playing time the rest of the year.
Right. So, in come December, January, we'll see. But I think it's something to watch. I think just even in a vacuum, anytime you're a 5-star prospect out of high school, you're like a top 10 player in the country, and it's year 2, and you maybe haven't found your footing yet, whether you're at Ohio State or Alabama or USC or wherever you are, you do start to wonder, okay, because look, Ohio State, the last 2 off seasons, is Kenyatta Jackson transferring? That was a question we were constantly getting. Is Kenyatta Jackson transferring? It's kind of a similar, deal as far as, maybe not getting the playing time he expected. Now it's been put to bed, and he's, getting a lot of playing time now and looks great. But yeah, anytime you have these situations, that's going to be a valid question is how long until they're in the portal. And I would think, I can't say this for a fact, but I would speculate that Keon Keeley is closer to entering the portal than Dylan Stewart. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And something else to remember is, there's a finite amount of snaps, and you're going to have if not A, then it's going to be B. And look, Edric Houston has come in and has started to see some meaningful snaps at defensive end. Caden McDonald has seen some very meaningful snaps playing his one-tech position. So it's great to be able to amass a roster full of great talent. And I'm not saying that Ohio State is completely full and no, we don't need anybody out of the portal. After this year, they're going to need a lot of people out of the portal, because we're going to see Ohio State's going to probably set a modern record for number of kids at the combine, number of kids getting drafted. It's going to be very large at that point. But you're going to miss on some, and then you're going to hit on some. They hit on Edric Houston, and then he seems like a hit because he's playing very well. I mean, certainly, remember that he got his, head or hands on a couple of passes in the Akron game, and you're seeing 96 and 98 out there during even more meaningful minutes. So it works out. It does work out. Sean Duffy, any other O-line recruits we can go after that are committed to teams that have flopped?
I mean, the short answer is yes, but right now DeBose is kind of the focus. And again, this isn't me talking on this, because I've already just stated, if you were here the last 10 minutes, I did state I'm not super optimistic yet about that. But I can tell you that there are people over in the Woody that feel they've got a real chance to do this. And so I think they're going to exhaust that here for a little bit first. I'm sure there are back channels being worked with other big name players that maybe we're not even thinking about right now, that they haven't maybe recruited before. But you're also talking about a somewhat limited pool. Like in the portal era at a place like Ohio State, there's less incentive to reach to fill a quota. You would rather go, instead of taking a 3-star kid from Ohio or a 3-star, flipping a high 3-star kid from a Florida school that's up in flames, you'd rather go get a Josh Simmons. You'd rather go get a McLaughlin. You'd rather go get a Jonah Jackson. So I think we're talking about a fairly limited pool of players. I think we're talking about guys that the coaching staff would view as like legitimate potential stars, like legitimate potential difference makers. So I don't think it's just going to be a thing of, well, we got to get this quota or we got to get whatever. I think they're going to let the DeBose thing be exhausted. I think they know they have to go to the portal in the offseason anyway. Like they're going to lose some guys on the interior. They may lose a couple of tackles. Look, Josh Simmons has been really good since about the 4th week of the season last year. And if this team accomplishes what it wants to accomplish, Josh Simmons may not be back next year. So I think they already understand, like, this is going to be a portal off season for the offensive line, at least one guy. So I don't think they're going to just go out there and just land any random kid that they're going to try and flip just to fill a quota. I just don't. And so as soon as we get some names that are kind of worth tossing out there, we'll toss them out there on the site and we'll talk about them on here and everything else. But I think, again, right now I've just been told that they are locked in on Micah DeBose right now, and they're feeling like they've got a shot. So we'll see how that goes.
Other big names. Jeff Johnson, will we join the bidding war for Jahkeem Stewart?
Well, there's no question Ohio State's in the Jahkeem Stewart race. I mean, 1,000%. And like I said with some other guys, well, like I said with Jeremiah Smith last year, like I said with David Sanders this year and other guys in the past, Ohio State is going to be competitive in NIL here. This is not going to be a thing where Jahkeem Stewart gets twice as much NIL dollars to go somewhere else. That's not going to happen here. If Jahkeem Stewart goes somewhere else, there's going to be other factors involved that aren't solely NIL. Like, they're not going to lose this thing because of NIL. So it becomes a thing for me with Jahkeem. My opinion has been that Ohio State and USC have forged the best relationships with Jahkeem. My belief is that they've done the best job recruiting him. My belief is that Jahkeem isn't as enamored with LSU as you might think a kid from his neighborhood would be. But I also know the pressure that is put on Louisiana kids to go to LSU. And I also know what happens in the weeks leading up to a signing day with the pressure and how much it gets amped up. And you have family to consider. These kids, some family may want them at LSU. Maybe not. Maybe, got to win. You want to win mom over to Ohio State. And from my understanding, the important family members in Jahkeem's life like Ohio State. So I don't think they're losing that right now. But it's just one of those things where it's all fun and games. It's all great right now. And when Thanksgiving rolls around and it's decision time and the pressure just gets ratcheted up to a 15 out of 10, will he be able to say no to LSU? I think just that's the thing for me, because I don't think in a vacuum, I don't think they are doing the best job here. I really think in a vacuum, Ohio State and USC are the two teams he favors. But we see this happen a lot, and then those kids end up at LSU. So,
just to Marc's point, I agree. I mean, at least we're not talking as much about the reclassification question because remember, he's a 2026.
That's been answered now, though. That's kind of indirectly been answered with his
right. That's where I was going with it. You don't leave a school that you're entrenched at and everything else unless it's for a darn good reason. And, so he is, in my mind, he's a 25. I mean, and we'll see. So where does all that go? I mean, when does he get that done to be able to take officials? There are a lot of layers there. I agree with Marc. I think it's SC and Ohio State that have probably out a little bit further. I talked to an LSU recruiting guy who's a good friend of mine who thinks that that's the same. He thinks that LSU is, hanging around, but probably not in the front of the lap at this point. So buckle up. That's going to be another fun one for us to cover. And I think, and if he ends up going elsewhere, I know that we'll have a lot of people who are going to be upset because that's how recruiting works.
So wishing him in the transfer portal for the 12 months after that.
Exactly. Another one from Jeff Johnson. This is a more team question or team comment. Most impressed by wide receiver blocking. And I want to jump on that because I think last year that was a huge issue. I don't think that the receivers blocked as well last year. And you're seeing a lot of guys who were on last year's team and who are on this year's team. And it just seems to be working better. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot more yak out there, because guys are being able to make these blocks, whether or not it's, for a fellow receiver or for a running back or whatever. But that is something that they seem to really focus in on. And so far, and again, playing against the MAC, and there's, congratulations to their kids. They're going to school for free on a scholarship and maybe making even a little bit of NIL. But let me see all of this when Ohio State is playing Big Ten opponents and ones that are at least close to being talent equated, which there aren't many.
Yeah, they've done a great job with their blocking on the perimeter. I know people like to make fun of that and how Ohio State maybe emphasizes that too much, and the young guys should play, even though who cares about blocking? But it's important. Like, as you saw on some of the running backs, they can spring running backs, they can spring their fellow receivers on screens. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. You have to be able to block. I've been super impressed with Jeremiah's willingness. He has missed a block or two. I'm not saying he hasn't missed a block or two, but he's not missing blocks because of lack of effort. Like, he is very, very serious about his blocking as well. So that's been super impressive to me to watch him, because I know how physically gifted he is. I've been covering him for years, and just the talent is insane. But the thing I'm always impressed with by him is his demeanor, his work ethic.
It's just me, Tim, 79. Any chance Wisconsin can beat Alabama? And that game is up in Wisconsin. So I would feel better about Wisconsin's chances if it were like late November and the weather were going to be a factor. Alabama has not looked like Alabama, but Wisconsin has not looked like a Big Ten team in its first couple of games. I mean, obviously, we talked about it earlier. Western Michigan, the team that Ohio State whacked 56-0, woulda, coulda, shoulda won that game against Wisconsin. I'll say things that we've said, whether it was on this show or another show, I don't even remember at this point. Phil Longo runs an offense that Wisconsin does not have the personnel to run. So you now have an offense that last year it was a different back. This year, Ches Malusi is really kind of the only guy that seems to be able to carry the mail. They've not been able to. I'm convinced that finding a transfer quarterback that fits your system, is difficult for a lot of teams. I mean, certainly Syracuse, I think, went into something getting Devin Brown. I think Ohio State went somewhere in getting Will Howard, but it doesn't always work. And so far, I've not seen anything out of Wisconsin to lead me to believe, unless Alabama has to walk to Madison, Wisconsin, that Wisconsin's going to have a lot of a chance.
No. Next question.
All right. Next question. Let me get here into the queue. The best damn pod in the land. Have you guys discussed Jerome Miles? Curious about that one since Heartline got in late, and then the commitment of Phillip Bell.
Yeah, I mean, they would certainly take Jerome Miles. I think Utah, USC are out in front. I think Utah will be my pick. I think USC, especially now that USC seems to have flipped their narrative a little bit in the other direction, in a positive direction here the first couple weeks. So I think he's a tremendous talent. I think Ohio State would love to have him. I don't see them landing him at this point.
We will stay in the same vein. Jeff Johnson, hearing anything about Max Patterson?
So let me the train. Are we talking about Delaware?
I don't know if I have a follow-up on that yet. So he was a name I wasn't familiar with myself.
He's a kid at Delaware. I have not yet. I know that's kind of been floated out there as like a guy to watch in the portal, but I have not heard that. If we're talking about a different one.
I was going to say, I think we probably just have to say wait and see kind of on that one. We will address it as, we'll both make quiet inquiries to our people and see.
Are we thinking about?
Yeah, he just.
Or are we talking about Maxwell Patterson from Dublin Kaufman? Because there's a project tight end tackle at Kaufman. So I got 2 Max Pattersons on my brain.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if Jeff comes back and hits us back, because I just saw him post a minute ago in the chat. So I know he's still here.
There's Max Patterson's like a possible portal receiver, but I don't think that they may be talking about the Kaufman kid. Okay, yeah, Kaufman kid. The big 6'7", there's a 6'7", 255-pound kid at Kaufman right now, Max Patterson. Sorry, I got a little. When you have a Rolodex of like 20,000 names, maybe conservatively in your head, it runs together. I think he's interesting. I mean, I think like Eastern Kentucky's like the only school that's offered him so far. He is big. He's athletic. Again, if you're Ohio State, my thought watching Ohio State and talking to them over the years, they are more correct. Yes, he's going to be an offensive. He plays tight end, but he is going to move to tackle. Correct. They are less likely to kind of play the project card in high school than they are to just take a guy out of the portal who's played 2 years somewhere and they kind of have some college film. Does that line up with my philosophy? Like my take. So that's my interpretation of their stance on these types of things. My take with 105 now is take a guy, maybe, and I'm not saying necessarily they should offer max. They've got to do their diligence there, but take a player like that every year. You've got 105 now to work with. We see, like, if you look at the NFL, like Lane Johnson was like a quarterback at one point. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Jason Peters was a tight end. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't even think, was Trent Williams Trent Williams wasn't like a 5-star guy. I don't think he, like, there are a lot more so than most positions. There are a lot of offensive tackles who have had very roundabout ways of becoming star offensive tackles, not to beat the Philadelphia Eagles theme down everyone's throat. By the way, they did beat the Packers on Friday night in Brazil, if anyone watched. But their left tackle, Jordan Mailata, was a rugby guy. Didn't even play football before the Eagles scooped him up. So I think when you're talking about a position like offensive tackle, which is such a developmental spot, I'm in favor, with the expanded scholarships now, with the transfer portal, and you're just constantly losing these 5-star kids after they don't play for half a season. I'm in favor of moves like that, whether it's Patterson, whether it's somebody else. I'm generally in favor of taking a player like that and stashing them and kind of telling them, like, okay, we will take your commitment, but we need you to understand before you do this, before you sign up for this, we need you to understand you're not playing the first year on campus. You're probably not playing the second year on campus. Maybe you'll play the third year on campus. Like, you're going to redshirt. We're going to utilize your full 5 years. And by year 3.5 to 4, we hope we've developed you into a Big Ten caliber starting player. And if that's the mindset of the kid and their family, and they understand, like, this is a transition process, then I think it makes sense. And so I'll be curious to watch all these types. There's always guys like this out there, basketball kids, converted tight ends. There's always weird situations like this out there with offensive tackles. And I will be as fascinated to watch it as you guys. I've not heard that they're particularly close here. And again, to me, the line I've always seemed to get is we'd rather portal for a second or third year guy than, kind of try and pay for a lottery ticket and hope we cash it in 3 years. But again, 85 to 105 may allow for some wiggle room on those philosophies.
If you miss, it's a 2-year commitment one way or the other. If you go and get a portal guy with 2 years left who has a proven track record of playing a collegiate opponent versus going after a project who might transfer out or be wink, wink, nudged out. It's both of those are kind of 2-year deals. I mean, yes, there's higher upside potentially on the high school kid because you could get 4 years out of him if he turns into something, but that lottery does not always hit. So I agree with Marc in a lot of aspects of that. I think that portal is the way to go. Mr. Juan, with Offord and Sanchez in 2025, does that mean we probably don't get both Singleton and Hill in 2026, being Victor Singleton and Albert Hill?
No, I don't think that at all. I'm not going to throw I don't want to throw a wet blanket too much on this, but they don't have Offord yet, in my opinion. They've got to still close that here the next 3 months. There's no worries with Sanchez, obviously, but to the real meat of that question, I think they can very easily get Singleton and Hill in 2026. They're both big OSU fans. These were dream offers for both kids. They're different players. Victor Singleton is very much a big physical corner, and Albert Hill is very much your smaller, more athletic corner. And look at what Ohio State's doing defensively right now. They're playing 3 corners. Jordan Hancock is not, they've turned that third safety is oftentimes a third corner. And it is a third corner with Jordan Hancock out there. I don't see any reason why they can't get both. They're going to have a mass exodus from their secondary the next 2 years. They're going to lose probably all of their starting corners after this year. I think Ignoson's going to play himself into the first round. I really do. I know no one's kind of talking about that right now, or maybe they are, but I haven't really seen him on mocks. I think he's going to play himself into the end of the first round. So they're going to lose those 3 corners almost certainly. Then you come back the next year, and it'll be year 3 for Jermaine Matthews. I mean, you may lose Jermaine Matthews after his 3rd year next year. So
what if Calvin Simpson Hunt has a big year in 1 year? And I know that we hate saying 1-year player and going. And do you have enough reps?
But they're at least going to be junior. They're going to be seniors when the 2026 class arrives on campus. Even if they stay, they're going to be seniors when the 26 class arrives on campus. So this has been spaced out very well for Ohio State. There's no reason for me that they can't get both of those guys.
Scott O'Neill, are they planning to give Bama a trophy for coming north of the Mason-Dixon line for a non-conference game and non-neutral site? Yes, because I do remember, I believe they go up and play Wisconsin in Green Bay or something? Was it them or was it LSU? Alabama does not go north. I think it was LSU now I think about it. This is a big deal, and I'm not saying it's what drove Nick Saban out, but when Alabama started scheduling all of these series, these home and home type series through the 2030s away, I knew that was kind of the end for Nick Saban there. And it's not that he has it. I mean, he coached at Michigan State. It's not like he's allergic to being in the north, not being near a Stuckey's or something like that. But I no word of a trophy going to them, but I mean, maybe an attaboy, maybe as you saw in the movie Blazing Saddles, a laurel and hearty handshake, but no hardware for that. But I think
they don't do helmet stickers, right? Alabama doesn't do helmet stickers, so
they don't. But hell, I was watching the Ohio State game last night on TV. And I plan on asking somebody about this. I think they're being a lot tighter with what the qualifications are for Buckeye stickers, because based on just the Akron game, because I was watching the Western game, so we don't know what they're going to look like at that point. And, the Akron game was good plus a lot of points. I mean, Jeremiah was better than that. I mean, even though he had some negative marks for a drop and some penalties, I didn't see really anybody with more 4 or 5 Buckeyes. I mean, there used to be games where you'd have 7, 8 Buckeyes, maybe 9 earned in that game. Hell, I don't even know if I saw any on Will Howard's helmet. And the question was brought up, is that because he has a green dot helmet and they have to share it? I'm like, no, I don't think that they have to. I saw 4 green dot helmets like on the sideline when I was on the field going from one end to the other end. And I saw I thought I saw a couple of Buckeyes on Devin Brown's helmets. So I don't necessarily know what's behind that, but it does seem to feel like they're being a little tighter with giving those out. I don't know if I want to waste one of the limited questions we get with Ryan asking about Buckeye stickers, because if you look kind of like, wow, you're just really focusing on all the wrong things. But I may ask somebody privately so I don't have to go through, public humiliation by trying to get that answer.
Yeah, I would imagine this team seems very self-motivated, which is fantastic. But the expectation is so high for this team. I have a feeling they're going to be stingy with those this year. I think they looked at the Akron. I think a lot of the coaches, I know they played really well, later the second half of that game. I think a lot of the coaches didn't think they played very well against Akron. And I think that came out a little bit in the press conferences, both post game and the following couple of days.
Yeah.
I know, and Chip Kelly even saying Philly did a good job calling plays. So he didn't get any Buckeye stickers on his dome either. But I don't know. There was this underlying tone of okay, we can't be too ridiculous about this publicly because we did win by 46 points or whatever it was, but we don't think we played very well. I think there was I think Caleb Downs even kind of said some things I don't know that we really played that well. So,
I mean, and the thing is too, is if this team goes in and just boat races everybody, I mean, these helmets could be full on old standards by mid-October, certainly by Halloween. So maybe they do have to do that. I've always kind of joked that they need to have like a normal Buckeye sticker is worth 1, and then one that's kind of like the one that they put on the black helmet or something like that's worth 10. So you have a couple of denominations or whatever. But I don't like messing with tradition. I don't like that, and I don't like hearing about it. If I sit there and say something about what are you doing, Noon? How could you sit there and buck tradition? You're not even from Ohio, dummy. So I just keep my big mouth shut. I just try to keep my big mouth shut on that one. Jeff Johnson says that Howard had his helmet shell replaced. I kind of figured something on that, but again,
where's the student assistant that's supposed to make sure the stickers are? Someone's getting fired. Someone's losing their internship.
Well, he may be coaching now because with the new rule and everybody.
They have student assistants for that to make sure the stickers transfer. Yeah, look, how many stickers are on this one? Okay.
Well, but now every position could be a coach at this point. So, and, God bless Quinn for on the Ohio State staff for keeping Ryan back. He's the get back guy. I mean,
he took a swipe on Saturday night. You probably didn't see. You were at the game.
Yeah, I didn't broadcast. See it. I've watched.
He was pulling Ryan away, and there was a swipe down on him. He almost took one. He almost literally took one for the team. Almost.
You need to sit there and put a leash that's around a belt loop or something like that.
There's old school forearm pads like the linebackers used to wear. He needs some of those for blocking Ryan Day's fists coming down on him.
So, we won't have to worry about any of that this week with it being an open week. What we do know is that game time has been announced for the Marshall game. That will be a 12 p.m. game on Fox. 12 p.m. on Fox generally means big noon kickoff as opposed to me kickoff. And then, from there, Ohio State goes on the road to play Sparty. We do not have a game time for that one. We either get them 13 or 6 days out, really kind of depending on whether or not the leagues or the TV networks get 2 of these exemptions. They don't ever really burn them in September, so that's not really an issue, but we do not have a time yet for for Michigan State. Let's see if we have anything else here in the queue. We have gone
about Howard and McCord. I hit on it earlier, but I don't think Mr. Wan was
here. It is. Here it is. Mr.
Yeah,
Wan, did we make a downgrade by going Howard instead of keeping McCord? I'll put in my notes first really quick, and I'll be quick about it so I don't take all of the opinions away from Marc. I think that McCord is plenty talented and is showing that off at Syracuse, but to be able to do what Ohio State needs to do, I think Howard is better. I'm willing to give up 5 points, 6 points of arm talent to get 10 points of rushing ability and things of that nature. We've not had one moment, and granted, Ohio State has completely overwhelmed its two opponents of lamenting third and short, fourth and short, whatever. There was a third and short. They did not convert into the second quarter, I think, maybe in the third, and they got a horrible spot. It should have never been third and short. A little pass to
the Judkins run.
There was
a Judkins run that set up the. Yeah, I thought he got the first down.
He got the first down, and then on the following play, they got up there and snapped it quickly. It was a pass to Kasmerick out of the flat, and he got dumped for like a yard loss.
Didn't like that play call, but
no, nobody.
That was like my one thing coming out of that game. I hated that play call.
Yeah, exactly. I hated a couple of ref calls too, but
Judkins was getting like 20 yards a carry basically the other night. Just give it to Judkins again. Oh well.
But your thoughts on Mr. Wan's question?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit earlier before you were on. This kind of topic came up a little bit. My thought is that, again, in a vacuum, is Will Howard some huge upgrade over Kyle McCord? No, I don't think so, just purely in a vacuum. But I think in terms of how Ryan Day envisions this offense going with a little bit more mobility at the quarterback position, and I also think in terms of, and this is maybe a little more luck than just planning, but I don't think there's any question Howard fits what Chip Kelly wants to do more than Kyle McCord does. So I think they got maybe a similar level of quarterback, but they got one that I think maybe fits more of what they want to do. And I think, obviously, Kyle found a very comfortable situation there in Syracuse. He's known some of those coaches there for a while. And so I think everyone's in a comfortable situation now, and I think everyone's going to be better for it.
Not a question in the queue, but something I want to bring up. CJ Stroud yesterday. I mean, he just continues. I know it's one game. We can't say a one-year wonder or anything like that based off of one game, but he has done a lot to erase the narrative about Ohio State quarterbacks. Justin Fields got the start for the Steelers. Probably not the cleanest game in the world there. I mean, picking up the dub is important, but, I think that the standard bearer for Ohio State right now is what C.J. Stroud is doing and just really what DeMeco Ryans has been able to get out of his Texans squad, because there's still shortcomings there. Stroud got sacked 4 times, but, He's done it right. He's done it right, and I think that's. I think we're getting close to the point where we're not going to have to hear about maybe some of the shortcomings that happened, at least until Michigan really announces its NOA or that's put out there, and then everybody will kind of relive that for a minute, and then we can kind of all get on with our lives.
Yep. Well, like we kind of talked about the last couple weeks, we like to do this about an hour, and we know it's never going to be exactly an hour. It's generally going to run 10, 15 minutes over, which we've kind of done here today. So I think we've kind of exhausted most of the questions. But we appreciate you guys doing this. Again, we're going to get more consistent with this in terms of time. We have kind of settled on 3 p.m. I think that fits everyone's Monday schedules here on the staff, that we're not spreading ourselves too thin, or we're all in pocket. Usually if I'm traveling for recruiting over the weekend, I'll be back by a Monday. If they're traveling most road games, they'll be back for a Monday.
Everything but Oregon.
We will have a schedule change after the Oregon game that we will try and announce in advance, so we can figure that out, because we're not going to be able to do Monday afternoon after Oregon with their travel. They'll have travel back. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. And again, every Monday at 3 p.m. is our goal moving forward. So, bookmark that in your calendars. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, so you can get notified when we do the bell. And
the bell doesn't always work, but most of the time.
Right. I do want to say one thing before we get off. We are doing a quick monthly subscription flash sale. If you sign up for a monthly subscription, the normal price is $12.99. I've put it down to $4.99 for your first month. We'll go to $12.99 after that, but I'm giving everyone a month for $4.99, which if you sign up now basically takes you up to the Oregon, just before the Oregon game. So it takes you through Michigan State, Iowa, it takes you through the next, I don't know, 3 games, and then right up to Oregon. So give us a shot if you are not already. I'm going to keep that
Looking at you, Sue. El Suzabo. I know you said that you'll not get to your jewelry, but check us out.
I'm going to keep it up till probably like tomorrow evening at the latest. It will certainly be up through tonight. I'm going to shut it off tomorrow at some point, probably early evening tomorrow. So it's only going to be up for another like 24 hours. But I didn't want to hit you over the head with that at the beginning of the show, but we got a bunch of people in here now, so that's there. If you go to the account, if you subscribe, hit the subscribe today on the front page of BuckeyeHuddle.com. It'll take you there. It'll say $12.99, but read underneath. It'll say $4.99 sale. The coupon code will be automatically applied. You don't need to type in any coupon code. You just need to subscribe to the monthly subscription. It'll only charge you $4.99. But as always, if there's any questions, billing questions, anything like that, you can reach me at mgivler@gmail.com. Or look me up on Twitter and tweet at me or something, and I should be able to see that. So, again, appreciate everyone for joining us here every Monday. These have been good for everyone to gather here on Mondays after games and do a recruiting wrap-up and talk about the team a little bit. And so we're going to keep doing it. So appreciate everyone watching and listening. We'll see you on the website, and we will talk to you again soon.